Navigating School Avoidance. I would like to introduce Dr. Rebekah, Bryson, and they're going to navigate this discussion for us together. I do believe, Becca, you're going first. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of your way.
So just as a quick introduction, I'm a licensed psychologist. I work at Barlow and Adams Behavioral Health in Rocky River. Previously, it was Megan Barlow and Associates. I joined Megan, moved here about 8 years ago from Chicago. And I work primarily with kids and adolescents. I do work some with young adults, some with adults as well. But pretty much 4 and up is kind of within my purview. In our practice, we see a lot of anxiety, a lot of kids with more disruptive behavior, and that might look like refusal or things like that, but maybe there's other things going on too. Depression, ADHD, the autism spectrum, we kind of cover all of those things. And in that work, I work with parents a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of parent coaching going on, both for how to navigate some things with your kiddo, as well as how do you help yourself through some of these moments that are really tough. As a parent, to know, like, you just want to help your kid, right? You just want to kind of solve the problem for them, and how do we equip them to do some of these things? So common things that I talk about in my office, electronics and social media, those are big things amidst school and friendships and things like that. Sleep, I'm pretty harsh on sleep and the importance of sleep. And somehow a lot of my clients have the one parent that's really strict and that does things that no other kid's parent does, like rules about electronics or when they have to go to bed and things like that. So I live in Shaker Heights with my wife and 3 daughters who are 12, 9, and 6 now. And so this is our first year heading into middle school personally, which my wife will tell you I've been terrified of for years since I work with middle schoolers. So anyway, that's just a little bit about me.
Great. Okay. My name is Rebekah Bryson. So I previously kind of have been in a few different places. So I was at the Cleveland Clinic for about 13 years doing outpatient behavioral health there. So pediatrics, again, kind of similar to Rob. My age range was about 2 to 21. Kind of saw across the spectrum as far as concerns, ADHD, anxiety, depression, and autism, things like that. Worked a lot with families and coping, and then helped a lot with parents and resources with schools. So then I did a little private practice. That's actually how I met Rob. I did a little bit with Megan Barlow and on my own. And then a job opened up at the schools with Avon High School, and they were fortunate to have a social work position, and I jumped at it. I always have wanted to be in the schools because we all know when stress and anxiety and behaviors and all that happens, it happens a lot of times right in the building. So the fact that I'm able to be right there with our students when their primary concerns are happening is one thing that I truly enjoy. So I am primarily with high schools now. I do miss my younger kids, but I really enjoy being in the crisis and with them every day. So I do live right here, right down the street, and I have a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old. So, okay. So here's just some of our objectives. Definitely want to help improve communication between families and school, as well as parents and children. We want to help you give some positive coping and manage stress, work collaboratively, yes, with educators. And then, of course, we want to support our child's success. Really quick as we move forward, just for Rob and I to understand, by show of hands, how many of you are here for an elementary school student? Okay, by show of hands, who are here for a middle school student? Okay, and by show of hands, who are here for a high school student? Okay, so we do have across the board. Perfect. And that's why we're here. Oh, I see some comments going. So of course there is no right or no difference in school avoidance. It can absolutely start as young as kindergarten, and it absolutely can go all the way up to senior year and so forth. So we want to make sure that we're kind of addressing it across the ages. So, what are some key reasons that we see school avoidance show up? Again, somatic complaints is a huge one. I have a stomach ache. I have a headache. Chronic pain starts to come up. I don't feel good. A lot of times it happens after a sickness, and then that sickness kind of lingers a little bit longer than it's supposed to be lingering. Absolutely bullying concerns. Sometimes we know what's going on. We're very well aware that this situation is occurring. Maybe the school's handling it. Maybe they're not handling it. Or maybe we don't understand it. Maybe our child hasn't explained to us the bullying concerns. So that's absolutely a thing that comes up when it comes to school avoidance. Family environment. We know that sometimes if there's stuff going on in the home environment, maybe there was a family death, maybe there's some interactions between the parents in the home or the guardians in the home that have been affecting the child. Maybe one parent has recently moved or was hospitalized or something like that, that can absolutely affect our child's ability to be able to go to school. This anxiety, depression, anxiety being a big one, depression being the motivation to get there, academic concerns, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, school's too hard, I can't do this, I'm a failure, all my friends are smarter than me, and then of course, F, all the above. And sometimes, unfortunately, F, all the above is combined, and it could be various of these things all at once. So I really am coming at this from the school perspective, which is hard because I also come from the outside perspective, but Rob's going to talk to you about the outside, what to do when working with the mental health counselor, and I'm going to come from the school perspective. So as a school provider, my number one recommendation that I want to share with you all is communicate with the school. I can't tell you how many times I've been working with a student that I'm just looking at their attendance and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, the student's been out for 2 weeks. What's the first thing I think? They're lazy, they're not there, they're sick, right? And I'm not saying I'm trying to judge a book by its cover, but that's my first assumption, right? Because I know no different. And if no parent has communicated with me that I'm having belly aches the night before, that I can't get them out of bed, I can't get them on the bus, then I have no difference to know what's happening and I can't do anything different. So my number one advice, if you have not done so, communicate with the school. And I'm not just saying the teachers, and I'm not saying anything against, I'm just going up the chain of command. You start with your classroom teacher, but absolutely, if you are in the older buildings, you absolutely want to go up the chain of command and you want to communicate with as many individuals as you can. Talk to your school counselor, ask them if there's a school social worker, ask if there's a truancy officer. Most districts have some type of a truancy officer. It may not be specific to your school, but it's likely within the district. You want to talk to all the providers in your school as much as possible because you want to form your child's team. You don't want to go at this alone. And more than anything, you don't want it to be, oh, the parent wasn't communicating, the parent wasn't doing that. You want to make sure you have that team approach first and foremost. So that's my first thing of advice. The next thing is determine what is that cause of concern. Sometimes, sorry, we think we know. You know, we think, oh, they don't want to go because they don't want to leave mom and dad. We think they know because they just don't want to get out of bed or the subject's too hard. We think they know, you know, because maybe they're being bullied. But sometimes it's actually a lot more than that. There's actually a lot more layers that maybe we as parents haven't even figured out. So that's where you want to talk as the team. You want to talk with your child. You want to talk as a school counselor. You want to look at the child's schedule and talk about the transition between classes. Maybe it's just the hallways that are too loud. Maybe it's, you know, getting on the bus and there was a kid on the bus the first day of school who, you know, looked at your child funny. Maybe it's the teacher called them out the first week and told them, you know, that they were doing something wrong and now it shut them down for the rest of the year. You really want to dive into as many things as possible that may be causing your child to, you know, have frustrations or have difficulty going to school. And if that's especially for the younger child, you might have to give them a couple choices. You know, is it this? Is it this? Is it that? Because they might not be able to vocalize exactly what that is. So the next thing you really want to work on with the school is creating some type of a plan. So the goal is every single day to get the child to school, right? I mean, if we all lived in an ideal world, we wouldn't be here if that was the case, right? So my next slide is really going to talk about 1 hour is better than no hours, okay? So if you can get your child to school for 30 minutes, that is much better than 0 minutes. Yesterday, one of my students came to school and all we did yesterday, no joke, was we walked around the perimeter of the building. He was able to walk in the front door, the main office, and then we walked out the front door. That's all we did. That was what he was able to do. The day before, he came and he sat in the parking lot with his mom for 1 period. That's what we did. Today, he was able to get there for 3 periods. Now, I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, okay? So whatever time you can get your child to school is going to be helpful. And if it's, you know, right now I'm not talking about the night before. That's going to be some of what Rob will talk about. But you want to come up with some type of a plan with the school. So once we get that child in the building, once we get them on the bus, once we get them through the front door to their homeroom teacher or to first period, however old your child is, we're going to start that reinforcement right there. I went and bought him yesterday a lemonade. He didn't take it. So upset. But I bought him a lemonade. I was like, what do you want? I'll get you anything. I'll get you Chipotle if you want it. But you want to start with that reinforcement right there. If the reinforcement is a positive person, if the reinforcement is go in the gym and shoot some hoops, if the reinforcement is whatever it takes, right? So that's where you really want to be working with all those providers in your school to say, okay, we got him in the building. We did our job. But at that point, it's parents off. At that point, it's the school to say, okay, what can we do to reinforce the child to make this environment a more positive place? So at this point, we're not even getting them into their homeroom seat. We're not even getting them into a first period seat. We're getting them in the building, and we're getting a reinforcement for saying, great job, I'm really proud of you, you got in the building, okay? The other thing I say in one of the slides, every school district is different. Every school is different. So just be mindful that some of the things that I am mentioning may not also be a possibility at your school. So I do want to be aware. I don't want you all going back to your school and say, I saw this presentation and they said this. Like, you're going to need to work with your school and what your school is capable of, okay? But putting schedules in your students' day to know that they have breaks. And it's not as needed, right? So if you have a child who may have accommodations on some type of a plan, like a 504 or something like that, a lot of times kids get breaks as needed. That's really stressful for a child who has school avoidant behavior, because then they're kind of anticipating like, well, I need a break all the time. So what does as needed mean? I need a break every second of the day. So what we want to do is we want to put in a scheduled break. If your child gets to school at 9 o'clock, their first break should be 10:30. And then we're going to do another one at 12. And then we're going to do another one after recess or lunch period, right? So we want to have scheduled breaks for that child and the break should be no more than 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, depending on the age. They can run a lap in the gym, they can go sit in a quiet space in the counselors, they can go to the library and read a book, whatever that case is. But we're giving them scheduled breaks so they know exactly what to expect. So when they know, I just can't do this anymore, I've already been in this building for an hour and a half, I'm gonna, freak out, I know I have that break coming up. And that's really important for them because they like to have that expectation or that plan. As possible, allowing a kid to make some choices. I know their schedules are already set. I know kids are already in classes in the beginning of the year, but especially the younger kids, maybe there's anxiety around, I don't know anybody. Maybe there's anxiety around, especially some of the bigger districts that they move a lot of classes and they don't have anyone. Can they get to another class? Can they be in a class with somebody that they know? The other thing is a slow start to the day. Can they start a little bit later so they are missing the big rush of everybody come in? Maybe it's 10 minutes later and they can get a drop off instead of the bus, or they can miss the first 10 minutes of the day when everything's kind of chaotic. Everyone's hanging up their book bags, the classes are all walking, and they can have a little slower start. Okay. Other thing is just really, speaking in positive. So at home, if you're talking negative about the school, or you're talking negative about, well, you're going to be truant and you're going to get poor grades and you're going to miss things and people are going to notice, that's absolutely the attitude they're going to have. So we really want, as a school and as families, to come together and make sure that you all are talking on the same page, right? So that, everything feels doable. Absolutely. It doesn't matter. You missed the whole first 3 weeks. That's okay. We'll figure it out. I told my students today, you know what? We're probably going to count the first quarter as a wash. Let's just start second quarter. Right now, all I care about is your butt is in the seat. Literally, that's what I've said, right? We'll figure it out. Grades right now aren't important. I care more about that he's getting into the school building. And so that's really, you want to speak in those positive terms. And then absolutely continue working as a team. If something has changed at home, if the home circumstances change, let the school know. If you're having worse behavior or it starts to happen at night, let the school know, because then we want to be prepared that those days coming in might be more challenging, or we might notice a slower start, or we might need to change that schedule up. And then absolutely, if you want to take just a kind of picture of this, these are things to talk about as options. And again, the big caveat is please know that every school district is different. We have been able to offer several of these things to some of our students who have a lot of school avoidance. And really the whole thing is every case of school avoidance is 100% different. None of you sitting here today, none of you people online are going to be sitting here and saying, my case is exactly the same as somebody else's. And that's why it's so important to work individually with the school and or someone like what Rob's going to talk about, because you want to come up with what's going to be the best for your child. So here's some of the options that you might be able to do. For sake of time, should I move on to Rob? I have like 2 more slides. Okay. So I use these a lot. These are a therapy technique, but I use them actually in the school environment as well. The worry hill is my favorite. If anyone knows Dr. Leah, you of course have to coin her or give her credit. She uses this in some of her anxiety groups. It's actually as a local psychologist, don't go Google her. She doesn't have any books or anything yet. But This is just the worry hill. And I use this all the time because when you think of school avoidance, this is 100% what you are dealing with, especially if, I don't care if it's bullying, anxiety, depression, this is what we're dealing with. So I'm going to come a little bit closer over here. So if you have day one, right? Day one, we're all excited for school. It was great. It was wonderful. We all got through it. However, the more that we continue to miss school, the harder it is, right? So every time we miss school, it's like, yeah, it feels good. I'm home. I didn't have to do it. And those feelings of anxiety go away. Those somatic complaints go away. But then what happens, and what I continue to tell my students, is every single day that you don't come, it just gets harder. And so my student today, I was like, okay, if you can't come into the building, that's fine. Come to the parking lot. That's why we did it. So that's why we're using this technique with him. So I think it was Monday, he came to the parking lot and he sat in the parking lot 7th period. Tuesday, he came to the parking lot with mom 6th and 7th period, and I went out and talked to him. Yesterday, so Wednesday, we walked around the building and he walked in the front door. And then today, he was here for 3 or 4 periods a day. Now, we haven't said it formally because we haven't quite gotten there yet, but he is making steps towards that goal. And this is absolutely something you could do with the school building. You could do with an outside counselor. You could do as a family. And really the whole idea is, we're not saying step 5 is you're in school all day long. Step 5 is whatever is working for your child. Step 5 might just be waking up in the morning feeling like I can get to school, and step 1 is starting at bedtime, okay? So that is something, and sorry that I'm taking on Rob's now. I jumped. But absolutely, this is something you could in place at the school. Like first might be I sit in first period, or I sit with my homeroom teacher and I color, and I sit in first period and I feel okay, and then I take a break the rest of the day. And the rest of the day, maybe they're sitting in a student services office. They're sitting with the principal. That might be step 1. And then step 2, you kind of add on. The whole idea is you want them to start to feel success before we push on. If we push them and just say, well, it doesn't matter, it's just what you have to do, you're going to start back over. And expect backslides, vacations, breaks, long weekends. We have NEOEA Day coming up. You're going to have it that Tuesday after or Monday after NEOEA Day. You're going to have a backslide. It's going to happen. Be prepared for it. Sicknesses, right? If your child is sick 2 to 3 days, expect that lingering afterwards. And that's where communicating with the school. Hey, it's after a break. Can you come meet them at the door? They're having a hard time getting off the bus today. They had a hard night. Can you come meet them at the door today? Can we have a slow start again? Maybe they've already reached the top of their ladder. That's okay. Let's start back over at step 1, just for that week, for 4 days after NEOEA Day, because we want to set them up for success. As a parent, be consistent. Be consistent, be consistent. If mom or dad or whomever guardian is in the home, if one of them's a little looser, I'm going to be mean, get them out of the home in the morning, let the other parent, because at the end of the day, we've got to push, okay? And that's something that's really hard. But I always talk to the school nurse and I say, okay, don't send them home unless they're bleeding, they have 102 fever, they vomited twice, and they showed you. That's another one. And they showed you. Because all of our high schoolers say they throw up, and I don't think they throw up. So that's really important though, and I'm not trying to be mean, but a lot of kids will say, I'm sick, and then I have my chronic kid going home who has a headache and a bellyache. And let's be honest, that I could say that every day of my life. So we really are, encourage like working with the school nurse as well to say, hey, tough love, I'm not going to come pick you up when my child is texting me incessantly or calling, the school nurse is calling all the time, hey, can you come get them? It's okay to say, hey, I'm at work, I can't come get you, or you know what, why don't you make it 1 more hour? Can you make it 30 more minutes before I come? Even 30 minutes or an hour is extending that ladder, right? Is extending that hill just a little bit more. And then, of course, like Rob's going to come in, absolutely determine if a therapist is needed. If this is something that's chronic and continuing, that's when, as a school provider, we would absolutely say, hey, you know what, these are the steps we're taking. I really think it would be helpful for your child to reach out to somebody else. And then we would refer to Rob.
So I'm going to try and give you a glimpse of some of the process that I go through with a family. Obviously, some of this stuff that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to give you information about like what are the actual tools or language that I might use with families and with kiddos in session. I don't expect you to just be able to go home and start using that language and all of a sudden you take off. But I'm trying to give you a sense of like what are our steps and how do we work collaboratively with the school as well, because that's just a huge part of it too. So if I was to get a call from a school or from a family to say, we've got this ongoing school refusal going on, how do we get started? We're going to start with your initial intake. We're going to get all the background, but we're going to focus on some of these things because we're trying to really determine what are the guiding factors, what's driving the avoidance, what's driving the refusal, the I guess, the actual behaviors and things that you're seeing at home. So I'm going to look for anxiety and mood changes. Sometimes when we talk about anxiety, we're looking for what's going on over the last 6 months. With some kids, it's really about what happened as soon as school started, or what's happened. It's kind of a little bit more short term when we're talking about school refusal versus maybe more chronic anxiety or depression. What are the avoidance patterns and what does that look like? Does it start the night before? Does it start the morning of? Does it start in the middle of the night when they come and talk to you and say, like, I can't sleep, and I'm going to be too tired tomorrow, whatever it might be. So what's the avoidance pattern? As well as what is the school seeing? And I probably will mention this on multiple slides, but I will be often collaborating with schools. I'm happy to call teachers, school counselors, principals, whoever we need to try to figure out what are they observing, what are the avoidance patterns there. Because if I know something like, well, I go to the nurse all the time, okay, and then what happens? Well, and then the nurse sends me home, okay, that's useful information. Or I've got some, and these are older kids that have devices on them. I text my mom in the day, and then we have this conversation. Like, why are we having a conversation with mom? Mom should be doing something else, and say like, nope, go talk to the nurse, go talk to this counselor. So we're trying to figure out what are the patterns that are happening day to day. Then we want to also know, again, other contributing factors. So it might be other academic difficulties that we need to understand and maybe even assess for. Are there new demands? So kindergartner, there's new demands on a kindergartner all of a sudden. My 6th grader, now there's new demands on her. And she knew it. She was feeling it the weeks before middle school started. So there's new demands, and do I have the ability to meet them? And so that sometimes guides our treatment. What is the new demand, and do we have the ability, whether it's dealing with academics, executive skills like planning and scheduling, and when do I go to my locker, and how do I get to my locker and then back to my other class? Like, there's just a lot of executive self-management that is required as they get older. I want to know what the environmental stressors are for your kids at school. It's really useful to know for you, but you might know, you might not always know, but we want to understand what is the experience like in the building. What are some of the family dynamics that are happening? As Becca mentioned, there's things that are useful for us in treatment to understand about those patterns. And also, I'm going to be asking, like, what's increasing when you get to avoid? Well, I increase time on my tablet. I increase time hanging out with my mom. I increase, you name it. And what's decreasing? Well, I don't have to spend time with this person that's in my group project. Okay, so that's useful to know. So those are things that we're looking at as we're assessing the situation. And we might do an actual standard assessment. This is just a rating scale that parents can fill out. Older kids, we can kind of interview them to understand these different 4 factors. Is one of these things the main contributing factor? Because that helps direct our treatment. So are they avoiding some type of negative emotional experience? Are they escaping an unpleasant social or evaluative situation? Tests, quizzes, public speaking, you name it. Kickball and recess. Yeah. Attention seeking, are they trying to gain more attention from a parent? Or are there actual tangible rewards? Like, I have more time with this device. That's a common one that I hear now. Or mom takes me out to lunch because she's out running errands and things like that. So these are tangible things. So this scale will give us some direction based upon what is it that is the main target for us. So collaboration and treatment planning. I'm going to be contacting the school. I assume that you would want me to. I'm happy to do that, and I hope most other therapists will do so. That's something you should definitely, if you're working with a professional, definitely ask them. Can you be in contact with, and even if it's other non-mental health professionals, if you have an OT, hey, OT, can you talk to the school OT that might be able to connect with my kiddo in the middle of the day and do some of these things for them in the building as a coping mechanism when they're anxious, things like that. So I hope providers will be collaborating with your schools and that you'll be communicating as part of that too. And so that could be OT, PT, speech, psychiatry, also just your medical providers as well. And then we want to look at what are the different avenues of treatment. So some of this is individual therapy work. That's primarily what I do in sessions or in my practice is individual therapy. But as I mentioned before, there's a lot of parent coaching and parent involvement in that. Particularly at the younger years, but even with high schoolers, particularly if we're talking about school refusal, because parents are involved in this day to day. So they need to be involved in treatment in some capacity. And it might be a matter of different skills, different approaches, or stopping certain behaviors that are being done. We might need to assess for other things. So I might be sending people to OT, sending people to speech, because there might be a communication issue going on. We might need to evaluate for learning disorders or things like that. So that could be part of the assessment and part of the treatment process. And then we want to try and figure out what's feasible within the school building. As Becca mentioned, my daughter who's in 6th grade now, when she was in 1st grade, returning to school after COVID, they had been back a couple weeks, and then there was a substitute bus driver who went a different way home and said to her, he just made a comment. I'm just going to trust that it was just kind of offhand, but made a comment about, like, do you know which house is yours? Because I don't know which one is yours. I think he knew where the bus stop was, but he didn't know. And that was enough. For the next 3 months, pretty much I drove her to school every day because we had to go through this process of just fear about the bus, right? And fear about, can I get to school? And I would call the school, and I worked with them and the school psychologist at the school, and I tried to figure out, okay, can so-and-so meet her at the door, you know, all these days? And they said, actually, she's not in the building all these days. So it's not possible. So again, we have to collaborate and figure out what's going to work, who can be multiple safe people, and like soft entry and things like that. And she got back to school and she loves school and all that's fine. But again, it's like a small thing that you didn't realize. Just that one comment just created this sense of fear. I also really, really hope to be creative when we can, because that makes a difference for kids. So down here, if you can read it, it says puppy rooms and dead goldfish club. Let me explain that. So I can't tell you how many kids have told me that if their school had a room with puppies, they would go. They would go to school. They would cope with their anxiety much better in the building if that could happen. So far, I've yet to find a school that has a room full of puppies. If you can work on that,
Oh,
Becca,
I wish.
that'd be great.
I wish.
Okay. However, I did have a client who was about 5th grade, bright kid, enjoyed school, found learning to be, you know, motivating. There's a lot of stuff going on at home that was disruptive in his life, and suddenly school just kind of tanked, and he was having a hard time getting to school, you know, working and doing it, kind of achieving what we would expect of him. And at some point, his principal talked to him and said, like, how can I get you connected to school? Is there a club that you want to join, or you want to start one? And he said, I want to start a dead goldfish club.
Oh.
Okay, what do we do? Well, we're going to have a piece of paper where we can survey all the kids in the school. They can write down the name of their dead goldfish and when they first adopted their goldfish and when they died. That was it. That was the club. My client was the president of the club. His friend was the vice president, and the principal was the sponsor, and that's all it took. All of a sudden, he felt like someone saw him, someone gave him some type of connection to this community that was stressful in some ways, and off we went, right? So again, that creativity to say, like, let's connect with you and see what works for you, I think is important. Again, schools have limited resources, they have limited, you know, opportunities, but if we can just take some time sometimes to listen and try to figure that out, kids can sometimes reveal options for us that we didn't think about, because how many of you really thought of a dead goldfish club in your school? Parents, we have different approaches, don't we? And sometimes we need to understand what are these dynamics. So again, this goes back to that parent coaching aspect of the work that I do, trying to understand what is the different response style that you have. I've got some parents that themselves are very anxious, and I can understand why. But guess what? Your kids notice that, right? They notice that you are anxious about whether they can be successful today at going to school. And that's already going to trigger some of them. Other parents, they are just more angry. And so now we're conflictual. Others are more avoidant. You deal with this. I'm just going to leave, right? So trying to understand what are some of the patterns that we play into as parents and trying to find maybe our own coping mechanisms. Some kids end up, and this is not just school refusal, this could be anxiety or depression or other things, but some of their issues might be a diversion away from other stressors the family is experiencing. So again, we want to do a full history and understand what might be going on. Is there parent conflict or family conflict? And the kid, even without being able to verbalize it, is trying to maybe divert attention away from whatever that stressful thing is for them. We as parents sometimes will overcompensate for our kids. Let me take on all of the things for you. Let me, you know, whether it be homework, communicating with the school for older kids, any type of coping, let me try to do it all for you. And that leaves them with a void when it comes to their independent skill development. So we need to find ways for them to contribute to the family independently, to have this sense of value for their family, for their school community, for their neighborhood, whatever it might be. And then there's the parent rescue aspect of this. And I deal with this pretty much every year. I mentioned before that idea of, like, I'm texting with my mom at school and she's gonna come and get me. So I'm just gonna go to the office and she'll sign me out. What is that communicating? It's really, and again, I'm thinking of specific kids, both elementary, middle school age, but primarily high schoolers right now. It's communicating this aspect of, my mom doesn't believe that I can actually handle this thing. My mom believes that this stressor is too big for me. So of course I should get away from it. And so we want to be able to try to connect our kids with other helpers, with other resources. And that means sometimes we can't be that rescuer. Now, that's once they're in the building. Obviously, that's different when you're at home with them. But we want to try to understand, how are we trying to do too much in some regards? And then, as Becca mentioned as well, what is my view of the problem as a parent, and how am I speaking about it? Because I've heard plenty of kids mimic what their parents say. Oh, well, this teacher did this thing. This teacher is too harsh. This teacher does this thing. If my school changed in this way, if the vice principal would only, handle it this way. So some of those complaints from parents might actually be valid. But for our kids to kind of latch onto them and say, well, all of these other things must change before I can handle that stressor, before I'm going to start walking up that hill, it's kind of unrealistic, right? We can't change all of those different factors. We can try to change some. But we want to try to be careful as parents about how much we are blaming and putting other things in front of our kids for the reasons for why they're struggling. So some of the actual things that we are doing, okay? We're talking about body and mind. We're talking about social skills. We're talking about academic skills. It depends on the kid, okay? That's part of why we do the assessment. So part of what I might say might not be applicable to your specific situation, some of it more than others. So some of the things that I will do with kids as far as just physical coping skills, balanced breathing. Lay down, put a barrel of monkeys on your belly, and breathe, okay? We're trying to find a way for your brain and your body to engage differently in the moment. Because in the moment of distress, and you're focused on the distress, what is your body doing? It's getting amped up, right? Fight or flight type of reactions. And all of a sudden now I'm breathing faster, my heart is racing faster, my muscles are getting more tense, my stomach starts to hurt, because we're not designed to be in that type of mode for very long. And so when that mechanism kicks off, we got to know, how do we, return to a more calm state. So we try to do some of these things. Send them on sensory scavenger hunts, find 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, different textures, 3 things you smell, you name it. And we also do new sensory inputs. So I'll talk to kids, and again, you can do this at young ages, 4, 5, 6, about opposites. When you're really anxious, describe the state. Things are, you're warmer, your body is warmer, moving faster, maybe getting louder. So what are the opposites? How do I activate my senses to go from hot to cold, from fast to slow, from loud to quiet? So we do some of these things in session. And then ultimately my goal is for you to take it home, right? Like if it's only working in my office, then we need to do more. It needs to be practical things that really every day we should be practicing some of these things. Kind of like in physical therapy, if you've ever done physical therapy, and they say you can't just come to my office and do these exercises. You have to do it daily at home. It's kind of like that same type of routine. Heavy work is actually something I've learned from any OTs here. Any OTs? Okay, so I've learned, what's that? Okay. So heavy work, I've learned this from OTs, and I've really greatly appreciated that collaboration about the organizing effect that some gross motor activities have with kids. And so even just this afternoon, I had a kid doing wall push-ups and broad jumps and egg rolls, and that might not mean a ton to you, but you just think about the idea of like wall push-ups and just standing jumps, like some gross motor things, because some kids like the calming, soothing, quiet body activities, and other kids say, I just can't sit still that long. Like, give me something to do with my body. So similarly with my kiddo that was struggling with the first grade anxiety, it comes in waves. So we've had a couple other years where we have moments where we're really struggling to get to school. And so there was a period of maybe about a month where she was just doing a lot of morning bike rides. You could just see the cycle happening. And we kind of had to set boundaries to it, because she could sit and talk about it and be distressed for minutes and minutes and minutes and minutes. We could spend our whole morning talking about it. At some point, it's not helpful. Right? We're just stuck thinking about and stuck in that cycle. So at some point, I just grabbed her bag and her lunch and said, I'll take care of all this. You hop on your bike and just ride some laps. And it really just changed some of the dynamic of, okay, my body is in a different place, and that sends signals to my brain that I'm more calm, in control. Here's your bag back, off you go. So that was really helpful. So trying to engage the body and the mind together. And then for some of the, middle and later elementary school kids, we're going to start doing some more of that thought work. Are you being a self-coach? Are you being a self-critic? How are you talking to yourself through these moments? Are you looking at what is possible? Because kids will tell me all sorts of things are possible, right? Like, here's what's going to happen at school. We can come up with all sorts of things that are possible. We want our actions to be connected to what is most likely, what's probable. So we need to talk through some of those things. For some kids, we're working on social skill development because that's the primary factor for why I'm not at school, is I'm having poor or ineffective social interactions. And so we need to learn maybe some unwritten rules of social dynamics. We need to learn what's expected of me at recess. And we know that recess and lunch, these are less structured times. They're really hard for some kids to manage that. It's very freeing, right? They've been kind of holding it all together for however half the day. And then at recess, it just kind of just goes scattershot sometimes. So we need to help them sometimes figure out how do we regulate the social element too. As has been mentioned already, we want to gradually work ourselves back to school. As I mentioned, we want to focus on our coping, not necessarily the distress. So I've been told by skiers that this trees versus trail. But if you're skiing through the woods and all you're saying to yourself is don't hit the tree, don't hit the tree, don't hit the tree, eventually you're going to hit the tree. But if you say stay on the trail, follow the trail, look at my trail. So for your kid, like, what's the trail? We need to figure out what that's going to be at home. Is it going to be at nighttime? Here's our new routine. That's part of my trail. And we don't have to talk about the next day. We don't have to talk about all of the what ifs. Or maybe we talk about it in worry time. I will set with kids, you can have worry time. 5 minutes, download as much as you need to parents. They offer a big hug, and then we get back on the trail. Okay? We do our heavy work. We do our breathing exercises. We get into a consistent bedtime routine. So we do role play. We, again, maybe are addressing some of the parent responses, and then we're trying to integrate some of this with school, calling the school saying, here's what we're working on. Can you be integrating this into some of your time with this student? As I mentioned before, just the consistency of routines, morning and night, active coping. I know I've already talked through some of this stuff already. We want to have clear expectations and consistent expectations. So it's not going to be you wake up in the morning and I say, how are you feeling today? Does it feel like today should be a school day? Like, no, today is a school day. It's Monday through Friday, it's a school day. So we're going to have our same routine. We're not going to be kind of evaluating. And also when they come home, or even as they're thinking about school, I don't want to just interview for the negative. Was lunch really loud again, right? Were you overwhelmed in the kickball game? Was that kid mean to you again? Like, we're just asking them to focus on all the trees. So we have to find a different way to kind of interview and look for other things that are happening in the building, building those positive emotional experiences. Yeah, some of this I've already gone through, so I'm going to keep going. Well, some of this as far as re-entry, okay? So ROI, that's a release. Make sure that you sign a release so that we can talk. So that's important. Do we have a meeting? Is it on Zoom? Is it in person? Whatever we need to do. We've talked about who are the safe people, who are the helpers in that school building. We want to make sure we have a whole variety of them. A plan from the therapist. So as Becca mentioned, she's done sessions in the parking lot. I have also done sessions in parking lots at my office, but as well as at schools. I'm not going to say every therapist will go to the school, but I've gone to schools to meet with students. Let me see your classroom. We do this maybe after hours, or if your class is at recess, I'll sneak in the building. Let's go meet your teacher. Let's see where you sit. Things like that. Like, there's ways that we can try to have these small exposures while preventing the avoidance and implementing the coping. So whatever that coping is that we're working on in session that seems to work with your kiddo, we want to now do that in the classroom. So again, small steps up the hill, and then make sure that we're using our coping so that actually we're actually lower down the hill because we've now regulated. And then we take some more steps up the hill or up the ladder, and then we regulate and make sure. And so this is, again, other things that we use for the same things we use for other types of fear situations. Obviously, that's maybe most applicable to anxiety. If there's social things, we need to maybe have other experiences of social relationships. We need to have other experiences of handling frustration. We need to have other experiences of independent, management of tasks. So that's something that we can be building into day-to-day, week-to-week family life, to say this isn't just a school skill, but this is also something that you can do. So are we signing up for clubs or sports? Are we having play dates? Those are situations that are uncomfortable for plenty of kids, and they require a certain skill set. And we can talk to our kids about, hey, here's some skills that you used when you went to that birthday party at the new place with a bunch of kids you didn't know in a loud, overwhelming environment. These are the skills you use there. How could that be useful at school? So we're trying to help them see and generalize, like, oh yeah, I did do those things, and gain some of that confidence. You want to add any to some reentry stuff?
Absolutely for school reentry, exactly like Rob said, we're not going to just push for all day, every day. We're really going to push for whatever is successful. And that's where it is. It's exactly that of getting in and using those coping skills and regulating. Okay, how did that work? How did that feel? Reevaluating. Okay, now let's go a little bit more and pushing a little bit each time that we can kind of get that regulation. And I think that's really important to kind of go back and forth and come up with that plan. But I like how Rob is talking about if there's outside factors to continue, like socialization, we might be able to control some factors in a school environment and maybe eliminate some peers from some environments. But at the end of the day, we do need to teach our children we're not going to be able to be removed from all peers. We're not going to be able to get out of every class that we don't like. We're not going to be able to not get every teacher we don't want to be with, those kind of things. So we also have to teach them how to work with some of those things that are challenging for them. And that's where we're going to be working together.
So just in closing, these are just some general tips. Again, you as parents are going to have your own emotional response. I get that. Go lock yourself in the bathroom if you need to, right? Or go for a walk, go for your own bike ride. So kind of limiting anger directed towards the kid, reassuring your child about all these things that you need to show some trust in, right? That the teachers, the helpers, the counselors are there, are supports for them. And then we can also offer these concrete incentives, whether it's a lemonade or after school when you get off the bus, here's kind of, what we're going to do first, just something to be looking forward to. Finding out what makes your kids successful. I'm taking your slide here.
No,
Finding a menu of coping options. I've had kids take like an actual piece of paper, fold it into thirds, like this is their menu, right? Here's what gets me back to that green zone when I'm calm, when I'm ready to learn and happy. And I ask them sometimes, like, can we share this with your teacher? So they know that when you are closing your eyes and breathing, you're not refusing to do a task, you're coping, right? You're doing something. When you ask to get that drink of water, or we sometimes have nonverbals, because it's hard to ask for help, right? That idea of like, how do I ask for a break? I don't want to like tell all my classmates I need another break. So I have kids that just have a hand signal. When I do this, my teacher gives me a thumbs up and that says I'm allowed to leave the classroom. And I go out in the hall and I do my wall push-ups or whatever it is. And then I come back in. So we have a routine. We know what the routine is going to be. We learn it. It's not something just to get out of class and avoid. It's something to use the tool in order to re-enter comfortably. Or if there's a social problem, like who do I go to, right? If something happens on the playground or in lunch, who do I go to about that? Again, I'm not going to make blanket statements about all schools, but I know from my kids' experience, they have a hard time talking to the lunch aides and the recess aides. They're just not the people that they feel most able to get support from. But who do they go to? Right. And that's a hard thing. That's a really hard situation. But do I go to my teacher? But my teacher is ready to go right back into class. So again, trying to come up with a plan and a system for them to follow. What's the trail? Really, really try hard not to allow missing school. If like a little tummy ache, the complaints about some of the physical things, our kids can handle some of those things. Most of the time, some of those things start to drift away when we get our brain and our body shifted onto something else. And that's the hard part, right? Shifting into that new mode. And then once I do it, I'm on that bike and I'm moving. Oh yeah, my stomach is actually not hurting. I'm not thinking through this like spiral of worries. So
to add to that, a lot of times the kids will say, just let me skip this one time, mom, or dad, or grandma, let me just this one time and then tomorrow I'm going to go, right? So that's where we really encourage them, all of you, to really not give in to that. And it's so hard because you want to believe them. You want to trust that just this one time that they'll stay home and they'll be okay. And then tomorrow it is going to be different. And maybe you do, your child, and that is the case. But I would say in most of my experiences that tomorrow's just the same thing over
Mhm.
and over again,
Mhm.
right? So really, as much as I don't want to be a tough parent, but don't let them have that one time, unless again, that 102 fever bleeding from
Yeah.
from vomiting twice.
Sure. Yeah. All right. I think that's all we got from our slides.
I did remember one thing as far as school. So I'm going to go back just because it came to my mind and I wanted to think about it as far as like thinking of your teachers and accommodating. A lot of teachers now know they're going to be out because they have to request for a PD day or they have trainings or things like that. Like
Yeah.
I know my child's teachers are always emailing, hey, we're going to be out on Thursday. That is great information for you to know. So you can request with your school, hey, can you let us know when there's going to be fire drills? And to an extent, they might be able to let you. Can you let us know if there's going to be a sub? Can you let us know if there's going to be a school assembly or there's going to be a change in the schedule? Those are all things that are very relevant and going to be very important for your child to know if they have difficulty in the school environment, because those are things we're going to want to prep them for, whether with the school environment, working with the school, or if it's far ahead, working with their counselor.
Awesome.